How's it going, guys? This is Rio Murata, photographer based in Tokyo. So tripods plates, there are like many tripod plates out there and different varieties of quick release plates. In this video, I'd like to talk about the two most widely popular tripod plates as of 2022. And the reason why I made this video was I was sort of like gradually shifting from the Manfrotto's 200 PL plate quick release plate system to the Arca-Swiss type of tripod plates, and just wanted to make a video talking about the pros and cons of using those and sort of like my overall perspectives of each plate. So if you're new to photography, there are a lot of tripod plates, and going into the details, Manfrotto's 200 PL quick release type of plates are probably one of the most recognized, mostly common to use type of like tripod plates throughout the world. And sort of like a small background for you guys and for information for people who are new to photography, a tripod plate is basically a plate where you sort of latch onto the bottom of your camera in conjunction with or a combination with a designated sort of like ball head or any kind of tripod head of that manufacturer. Manfrotto Pl200 is basically a standardized like plate made by Manfrotto, a company called Manfrotto, which is headquartered in Italy, and they make like tripods and various like equipments. But probably a lot of Manfrotto's tripod use this plate Pl200, and this was actually the first sort of like tripod plate that I started using during photography school, and after I graduated I still used Pl200 up until just recently when I realized that there was something even better, which was Alca Swiss. Characteristics of the Manfrotto's Pl200 is that it is a small plate that you can basically freely attach to the bottom of your camera without using any tools. There's some kind of D-ring where you basically twist that sort of like screw onto the bottom of the camera, and you basically use your fingers to like basically turn it clockwise, and you basically latch onto it. And when you look at the backside of the tripod's plate, there is an indication of which side should be on the front side and which should be on the right or left. And there is the moment where you basically have that chance of going the other way, and you basically latch it on the opposite end, and you find out later that you basically like latched it on the wrong direction. And because the tripod plate is really relatively small, you can easily access the battery compartments of your like camera. If you're using digital camera, film cameras, it doesn't matter, but honestly, like, because it is small, it is easy to like transport and basically use on the go. Pros and cons, I just said the pros, but the cons of using this plate is that because it's not symmetrical, meaning that there is a front side and a back side, you basically have to check frequently on the other side to see if you're attaching the plate correctly on your camera. And it takes like 1 or 2 seconds to do that motion, but it adds up in the long run. I mean, you constantly have to, when you take this off and when you put it back on, you basically have to look at the back side to see if the front side, the point where the lens should be, is facing the correct direction. Or if you don't do that, it won't fit into the the slot of the quick release plate, which it kind of irritated me for quite a long time. And at the same time, I keep forgetting, but because it's asymmetrical, when you lock it into the quick release, this type of system, you basically have to lock it into 4 locations, 4 areas basically. You basically have to slide it in the front, and at the same time, you have to make sure that it is in the middle of the plate, or else you can't like clamp it in. And because it's like locked in 4 corners, you can't basically like move it sideways to do micro adjustments, which was a con. After using this like during photography school and after graduating, I used it during work for a little bit. I realized it started to like irritate me from the problems that I just mentioned, and I started looking around and if there were like any kind of alternatives to the system. And previously I used Manfrotto's, what was it, Pl400 or something like that for the gear head, and that was like huge, chunky, and it's like hard to like travel with those types of plates. and I said no to that, and I ended up like selling the gear head. But I would start to realize that a lot of sheer majority of professional photographers opted for the Arca-Swiss type of like plates, and this was actually the time and moment that I started like seeing a lot of people shooting with Arca-Swiss type of like plates on their tripod, and it got me curious. I realized that, like I said, a lot of like professionals used Arca-Swiss, and I kind of took my distance away from Arca-Swiss during photography school days due to the fact that it kind of like freaked me out, because Arca-Swiss typically you clamp like only 2 areas of the tripod plate, and that kind of like freaked me out, because what happens if the camera could like slide from the side, and you could drop your like camera. And that was like one of the reasons why I used the 200 PL type of plates. Like I said, you basically clamp the tripod plate onto the 4 corners of the what you call mounting system, so it's never gonna fall off. But at the same time, you're kind of losing that. You have to sacrifice that extra time that you have to allocate and making sure that it is attached correctly. So it was a trade-off. But after I think in my previous a long time ago, like 1 year ago maybe, I made a video of like talking about the the gearhead, actually the Benrose gearhead, which has an Alca Swiss. I think you guys saw that video, and that was basically a turning point for me. And I realized that I was like missing out on the larger like picture of why a lot of people use Alca Swiss. Like sort of like after purchasing my first like gearhead that was Alca Swiss compatible, the Benrose like GD3H or something, I forgot the name, but I realized that I was like missing out on something special, especially an important sort of like innovation in the photography community, which was the Alca Swiss. And I did a lot of digging and a little bit of research, and Alca Swiss is basically a standardized, it's similar to Manfrotto. They made a standardized mounting solution for their tripods, which was called which is now still called Alca Swiss as of 2022. And there are a lot of third-party knockoffs, and I'm fortunate to say that the price of Alca Swiss type compatible plates have went from really expensive to really cheap now. You can purchase them for really affordable prices, and a similar price to the the 200 PL plate from Manfrotto. There's a lot of knockoffs on that too. But what I'm trying to say is that the operations of using an Alca Swiss compatible plate is actually far greater, far easier than the Manfrottos that I've used in the past. And because due to the fact of the characteristics of the Alca Swiss having only 2 areas of point of contact when locking in your camera, you're basically like shaving off so much time and effort due to the fact that those are basically the only areas you need to lock your camera in. And at the same time, compared to the Manfrotto's 200 PL, instead of being asymmetrical, it is now symmetrical, meaning that the plate itself, no matter which position you mount it on, it will work flawlessly. And like I said, the Manfrottos, you basically have to look at the backside to see whether you're mounting it correctly, while the Alca Swiss, on the other hand, doesn't matter. It doesn't give up on like how you mount it to your camera. There is no front or there is no backside, so it makes your life so much easier. So the Alca Swiss, the majority of them have some kind of like D-ring attached to the bottom, so you basically do not need some kind of a coin to like screw it into your camera. There are some types of Alca Swiss type of plates that require you to use a coin or something to latch onto your camera, but in most cases the Alca Swiss type of third-party sort of like plates, you basically need your fingers to like screw it into your camera. So another important thing that I need to like mention is that Manfrotto's, I think typically 80% of Manfrotto's 200 PL plates, type of plates, have like, it's like a 2-lever operation. You basically have to like open up one of the levers and then open the real lever in order to like stick in that, quick release plate onto the tripod head. And this kind of bothered me a lot due to the fact that it's like a 3-finger operation, which sounds wrong, but bear with me. Like in order to open up that sort of like quick release plate, you basically have some kind of lever and another lever, like I guess a safety lever, a safety pin, in order to like lock that plate in here. And this applies to this type of quick release plates that's widely like known in the world. And also the fluid head that I use to shoot my YouTube videos, that is a Manfrotto's, I forgot what the name is, but a fluid head. And I basically have to like use 3 fingers. I have to like press down on one lever and press down on another lever for it to like open up, and then I can mount my camera, which is a little bit tiresome in some cases. And after I got my we call Alca Swiss type of plate, I realized that you really don't need 3 fingers, you only need 2 actually, and it's much more simple an effective way to like mounting your camera, due to the fact that Alca Swiss typically you only have one knob, which when you like turn it counterclockwise, it basically opens up the gap, and you basically sliding your camera, and once you sliding your camera, you basically wind it on the other side of the counterclockwise to clockwise, and then it kind of shuts down that gap and it basically locks in your camera, which is much more efficient, much more like easier to use after using it for quite a long time. Now there are like cons of using the Manfrottos. There's a lot of cons actually, due to the fact that, like I said, there's like 4 areas of contacts of securely like clamping it down the tripod plate. There has to be some kind of like wall on the right side and the left side, and the top and the bottom, to like securely clamp that, you know, tripod plate onto this. This size can never get any smaller than this size, because like I said, there's like these 4 walls that's basically like locking the plate into this location. And what I'm trying to say is that if you look at the Alca Swiss side of things, things get really tiny due to the fact that, like I said, the right side and the left side is widely open, meaning that when they manufacture a Alca Swiss type of plate, they can basically shave that off, making it much more smaller than the Manfrotto's counterpart. And what I'm trying to say is there are people out there who would highly love to have a lighter equipment when traveling around, and this Alca Swiss basically can supply that need. And the one that I have purchased is probably 2/3 like smaller than the Manfrotto's like counterpart, and like I said, lighter is better in some cases. And I basically love using that plate up until this point of shooting this video, and it's due to the fact that it's like small, and at the same time due to the fact that there's like no 4 corners, and at the same time they can, if you on the Alca Swiss side, you can basically drill out the inner part, making it much more smaller, much more lighter. And there are more expensive ones available if you are into that. And there's like so many like great things about the Alca Swiss compared to the Manfrotto side. So yeah, I think I covered mostly the most important things of using the tripod plates. And depending on what kind of tripods you use, obviously that's going to have a deciding factor on which tripod plates you will end up using. But it's great to understand the pros and cons of each tripod plates, understanding that each equipment that you use, and at the same time understanding that there are alternatives available in the market. And if you're like not used to that, it's a great opportunity to like try it out. If your friend or family or anyone in the photography community uses a different type of sort of like product or system, it might be great to like borrow it for maybe 1 day or so and try it yourself and see if it works. If it does, I mean, you can basically shave off your like time when working around in the field, and at the same time you can learn so much from using new equipments along the way. And it really boils down to your personal perspective of like what type of equipments you love to use and you don't like to use. And obviously there's no perfect like equipment and accessories available, but you basically have to inch closer to perfection by sort of like updating your equipment along the way when you're doing that creative process. And it's interesting now, since that for photography right now I use Alca Swiss for majority of my projects and stuff like that, but for video, like I said, I still use a Manfrotto's 200 PL plate type of fluid head, which I need to update sooner than later, because like I said, swapping one plate for the other is really inefficient and time consuming, and I'm losing valuable time during that process. So yeah, and then I might update it to an Alca Swiss type of like fluid head in the meantime. So 1 year ago I made a video on L bracket, the Leofoto QR something bracket. Actually that like L bracket for the GW690 actually uses an Alca Swiss type of mounting system, meaning that I can basically use that on the new Alca Swiss like compatible like tripod heads. I can use it on quick release plates and stuff like that. And this is like another thing that I realized over the course of the year, that L brackets, which if you guys know are used when you're shooting in vertical and horizontal, it makes your life so much easier. The majority of them are already Alca Swiss compatible, meaning that, I mean, if you need an L bracket, that's probably the only option available if I'm right. And at the same time, it's the most efficient method too, due to the fact that I forgot to mention that not L brackets, the Alca Swiss type of mounting system compared to the Manfrottos. Like Manfrottos, you're basically stuck in one area. When you latch your camera onto this like system, you can't move it to the right or left, like I said. But the Alca Swiss, on the other hand, you can basically, because there's a cutout on the right side and the left side, what I'm trying to say is you can basically slide your camera to the right or to the left if you want, depending on the circumstance. Like you already have all your setup, you have your camera mounted onto a tripod, you're ready to shoot, but you realize that you wanted to inch like 1 centimeters to the right because your composition was wrong. And I mean, you can move your tripod 1 centimeters to the right, but that's a daunting task versus if you just move that tripod plate to the right 1 centimeter. I mean, that's easier, right? So that's like one of the things that I've noticed using the what I call the Alca Swiss type of mounting system. There's a little flexibility that you can do if you want to move your camera slightly to the right or slightly to the left, and for some cases that might be a lifesaver for a lot of people. So that's one of the things that I realized. Okay, so yeah, that's basically it. I think I talked so much about just one topic about tripod plates. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully it educated a lot of people actually along the way. And at the same time, I'm kind of curious about you guys when you go shoot out into the field or maybe indoors, like what kind of tripod head systems do you guys use? And what's your reasons for using that like system? And at the same time, what's the worst tripod head that you have used in your photography career or your like as a hobby and stuff like that? Like what is the worst one? And in my case, the worst tripod plate that I've used is probably Manfrotto's 400 PL plate that comes with the gearhead of the famous gearhead right here and this one right here that I previously used. Those were hectic because I didn't have a coin to screw on to the camera. And in addition to that, Manfrotto's hex type of, what do you call it, hex tripod plate, I think for video shooters, I think I used it once. That was chaotic. I mean, why the heck did you guys make that kind of? So there's a lot of like, you know, blunders and like life, and I'm like kind of curious like what kind of tripod heads or tripod plates you guys like used and dissed at the same time. So yeah, hope you guys enjoy the content, and if you have any questions, please leave it in the comments section below. I'm happy to reply. So yeah, so we'll see you next time. Peace.